They said the condemned sang like nightingales. What they didn't tell you is that the music came with the smell of cooked flesh. Welcome to Agrigentum, 6th century BCE. Forget the postcard Sicily of olive trees and soft sun. This was a tyranny factory run by a man named Phalaris, a man who believed cruelty wasn't just a tool, it was an art form, and his masterpiece, a musical instrument that played in the key of human misery. Enter the Bronze Bull. Picture a hollow brass beast, its body gleaming under the Mediterranean sun, big enough to swallow a grown man whole. Inside, nothing but darkness and despair. In its nostrils, delicate pipes, tuned to perfection. This wasn't a coffin, it was an acoustic chamber. You'd think the purpose was execution. Actually, it was performance. Prisoners didn't just die, they debuted. Their screams were the symphony, their thrashing the choreography. And Phalaris, the impresario. He commissioned an Athenian artisan to design it, promising glory for his innovation. When the work was done, Phalaris smiled, clapped, and locked the artist inside for the demo. Ancient marketing at its finest. If it screams right, it sells. As the fire roared beneath, the pipes did their job. The man's cries twisted into haunting melodies, drifting over marble courtyards where elites reclined with goblets of wine. Steam rose through the bronze seams like incense in a temple, sanctifying the spectacle. Justice, they called it, governance with a side of opera. They didn't just kill you, they made you a song. And then they listened as you burned, nodding to the rhythm of your agony. Because in Agrigentum, power wasn't enforced with swords alone. It was roasted, plated, and served with applause. But the bull wasn't built for punishment alone. It was built for obedience, for loyalty cooked over slow fire. And that's where chapter 1 begins. How does tyranny turn pain into policy? Spoiler, this wasn't just punishment, it was policy. The year is 570 BCE. Sicily is a chessboard, and Phalaris has just flipped the board to crown himself king, or as he called it, reformer. He swept into Agrigentum under a banner of progress, equality, prosperity, better laws. If that sounds familiar, it should. Tyranny never introduces itself as tyranny. It always shows up in a clean toga, promising justice. But Phalaris's idea of justice had heat. His recipe for power was simple. Crush your rivals, consolidate wealth, and make obedience visible. Public executions weren't just warnings. They were branding campaigns, burned straight into the collective mind of a city. How do you advertise terror? You stage it. Rivals didn't simply vanish. They debuted in bronze chambers that doubled as instruments. Grain hoarders, tax cheats, even poets who got too clever with their satire, all took the hot seat. And everyone watched. Because when Phalaris promised better laws, he meant laws enforced with fire. Imagine it. The marketplace quiets, the crowd gathers, and the pipes of the Bronze Bull begin their grotesque recital. Oppose Phalaris, and your screams don't just echo, they harmonize. He made it clear, loyalty wasn't optional. It was mandatory, and it came with a temperature setting. The effect? Terror became infrastructure. Streets whispered with fear. Merchants lowered prices rather than cross the man with the bull. Priests nodded along to his decrees. Not because they respected him, but because no one wants to end up as dinner music. Phalaris didn't just burn bodies, he baked obedience. And he served it hot, every single time. But here's the question no one asks. Why a bull? Why not a sword, a pit, a plain old noose? Why turn death into this grotesque pageant? The answer grazes into something older than politics, something sacred. Chapter 2 walks into the temple. What's holier than a bull in ancient Sicily? Everything, except the tyrant who decided he was holier still. To understand why Phalaris chose a bull, you need to understand the bull's resume. Strength, virility, divine favor, the full mythological linked-in profile. Bulls weren't just animals, they were icons. They stood in temple courtyards, gleamed on sacrificial altars, and strutted through festivals draped in garlands. People sang hymns to them. Farmers prayed to them for fertile fields and fertile wives. In short, the bull was branding gold. Phalaris didn't just notice that, he monetized it in blood. His bronze bull wasn't some whimsical sculpture. It was propaganda you could roast a man in. By weaponizing a sacred image, he fused piety with policy. What better way to broadcast divine right than to cook your enemies inside a god's silhouette? Picture the scene. Festivals once celebrated with wine, music and garlands now had a new centerpiece. The Festival of Fear, they might as well have called it. Priests muttered blessings over the hollow bronze beast as fire crackled beneath. Citizens gathered, unsure. Was this an offering or an execution? The smell of sanctity blended with the smell of smoke and seared flesh. When theology and tyranny share a grill, who dares separate them? This was genius-level psychological warfare. Phalaris didn't just kill dissenters, he made their deaths look holy. To defy him wasn't just treason, it was blasphemy. Suddenly opposing the man with the bull was like slapping Zeus across the face. Divine terror welded to political terror, two metals cast in the same mold. They wrapped tyranny in temple incense, they sold oppression as ritual, and the crowd inhaled both. But don't think this stopped at spiritual optics. Oh no. The bronze bull didn't just sanctify power, it monetized it. Fear was currency, and Phalaris was about to start printing it. Chapter 3 opens the ledger of death. You thought executions cost the state? Under Phalaris, they made devised, money. Sicily wasn't just sunshine and olives, it was grain country, the breadbasket of the Mediterranean. And Phalaris? He knew a ripe harvest when he saw one. He taxed farmers until they coughed up drachmas like bad debtors. When they couldn't pay, guess what happened next? Suddenly, debt looked a lot like treason. And treason had one address, inside the belly of a bronze bull. Here's how the system worked. Step 1, accuse. Step 2, roast. Step 3, seize everything. Land, livestock, warehouses, stripped clean and funneled straight into the tyrant's coffers. This wasn't justice. This was foreclosure with fire. For every body that screamed, a farm changed hands. For every hymn of agony, a vault swelled with grain. Merchants fared no better. Fraud, they called it. One day you're selling amphorae, the next you're marinating in bronze. Your cargo, gone. Your home, auctioned to Phalaris's loyalists for pennies. And those loyalists knew the game. Cheer loud enough during the burning, and you might get a vineyard by sunset. The bronze bull wasn't just a torture device. It was an ATM. Insert enemy, withdraw wealth. Crime? No. Economic cleansing, they said, probably with a straight face. The result? The old wealthy class evaporated like steam from a bronze seam. In their place rose a new aristocracy. Phalaris's drinking buddies and enforcers, men fattened on other men's legacies. The bull didn't just eat flesh, it digested fortunes. Justice had a new business model, and yes, it came with a roasting clause. But you can't just slaughter and steal forever without selling the story. How do you turn horror into a headline the public swallows? Simple, you brand it. Chapter 4 unveils the ad campaign that made tyranny look like tradition. Today's tyrants hire influencers. Phalaris had poets. This was a world without Instagram, but don't think propaganda was any less polished. In ancient Sicily, influence traveled by lyre, altar and coin. And Phalaris? He understood the algorithm of fear. He didn't just burn people, he branded the burn. Executions became theater. Picture the bronze bull, draped in garlands like a temple idol, gleaming under the sun as priests sprinkled it with perfumed oils. Before the fire was lit, hymns rang out. Not dirges, hymns. This wasn't punishment, the bards insisted. This was purification. Justice with incense and applause. Phalaris made sure every sense was recruited. The ears heard music, the eyes saw sacred ritual, and the nose caught the sweet smoke of roasting flesh, framed as atonement. Priests preached that the gods smiled on these sacrifices. Coins bore images of bulls, stamped into daily commerce like divine hashtags. Remember who rules you. Even artisans joined the PR team, etching the beast into pottery scenes as if it were just another mythic creature. No big deal, just a symbol of order. And the messaging didn't stop with adults. Children learned nursery rhymes about the bull's roar, sung with the same cheer as lullabies. Imagine growing up thinking tyranny tasted like lamb stew. Because after the execution came the feast. Citizens broke bread under plumes of smoke, telling themselves they were dining with justice. Nobody asked where the meat came from. They just cheered the spectacle and wiped their mouths clean. Phalaris didn't rule by fear alone. He wrapped it in garlands, marinated it in poetry, and served it as heritage. But here's the thing about fear dressed as tradition. Eventually, someone peels off the garland and sees the iron underneath. And some did. They whispered rebellion in back alleys, their voices thin as candle smoke. Chapter 5 cracks the silence. Every tyranny believes its bull is eternal. Spoiler, it's not. For years, Phalaris ruled like the sun, blinding, burning, unavoidable, but even the hottest star runs out of fuel. The cracks started small, a grumble in the marketplace, a prayer uttered a little too softly. Farmers, squeezed dry by exes, began to spit his name like a curse. Exiled nobles, nursing grudges in distant courts, sharpened their plans like blades. And in Himera, a neighboring city that had never loved Agrigentum, the scent of opportunity curled through the air like smoke. Rumors slithered through streets. Whispers said Phalaris was cursed, that the gods frowned on a man who roasted men like sacrificial lambs. Priests, those old guardians of divine approval, began hesitating at the altar. Their blessings faltered, like torches in the wind. Traders joined the quiet rebellion, sabotaging grain shipments, choking Phalaris's war chest without drawing a sword. What started as murmurs became a network, an underground current flowing stronger every day. The boldest signs were almost poetic. A priest carved a cryptic inscription into temple stone. "The bull will graze on its master." Citizens walked past, pretending not to notice, while rebels smiled behind their wine cups. In vineyards, they plotted under the hum of cicadas, disguising strategy as drinking songs. Toasts to harvest, masked toasts to insurrection. By now, Agrigentum was a city simmering, quiet, tense, ready to boil over. Fear still ruled, but hope had cracked its mask. The question wasn't if Phalaris would fall. It was how poetic his ending would be, and whether the bull that sang for him would ever roar one last time. The smoke that once silenced now signaled revolt, and if you think fate spared Phalaris from irony, think again. Chapter 6 serves a twist so perfect you'll almost pity him. Almost. Guess who finally got invited inside the bull? The host himself. It started with the city that had been watching, waiting, Himera. While Phalaris played God in Agrigentum, Himera sharpened its knives in silence. When the whispers turned to roars, they struck. Agrigentum didn't resist long. Why would it? Its citizens were done clapping for executio. As bouts, the garlands were wilted, the hymns sounded hollow, and loyalty, that had gone up in smoke long ago. Phalaris ran, of course. Tyrants always do. They rule like immortals and flee like rats. But fortune wasn't on his side. Himera's men caught him in chains. A spectacle far quieter than the ones he loved. No crowds, no music, just the hiss of fate. And then came the idea. Poetic, cruel, inevitable. The bronze bull wasn't dismantled. It was waiting. They dragged him to his own altar of terror. Chroniclers swear he begged. Some say he laughed, claiming he'd become a god. Either way, the ending was the same. They roasted Phalaris alive inside the very beast he'd built. The pipes sang again, but this time the melody tasted like irony. Smoke rose over Agrigentum, curling into shapes that might have looked like a crown slipping from a head. Some stories say his bones stayed inside, a white lattice against bronze walls, a macabre monument to hubris. Others claim the bull was paraded through streets, its belly echoing with the memory of screams. Agrigentum watched as tyranny boiled in its own pot. Justice didn't wear a laurel that day. It wore a smirk. The chef became the stew. The maestro of misery played his own encore, and the music ended with him. But if you think the bull died with Phalaris, think again. That beast had afterlives, traveling, inspiring, and burning its way through history. Chapter 7 lights the next fire. You think cancel culture is modern? Try 2,500 years old. Phalaris may have died screaming inside his own invention, but the bronze bull lived on, bigger, louder, immortal. Not as an artifact, but as an idea. And ideas don't burn, they spread. Greek dramatists feasted on the story like vultures at a royal banquet. They turned his cruelty into theatre, his hubris into dialogue. The bull became the punchline in every morality play. Invent pain, and you'll be cooked in it. Then Rome picked it up, because Rome never met a blood-soaked anecdote it didn't love, philosophe. Hers used it to sermonize on justice. Historians sprinkled it like salt across speeches about civic virtue, and the poets, oh, they adored it. Lucian mocked it with satire sharp enough to cut bronze. Ovid moralized it, draping the tale in verses about fate and fire. Fast forward to the Middle Ages, and monks, those self-proclaimed curators of civilization, couldn't resist. They inked it into manuscripts, savoring every detail like sinners at confession. To them, the bull wasn't just a torture device. It was divine payback in surround sound. And Dante? He didn't just mention Phalaris. He threw him into the inferno, boiling in rivers of blood, a remix of his own recipe. By the Renaissance, the bull was trending across Europe's intellectual salons. Pain had gone viral. Writers name-dropped Phalaris as shorthand for tyranny, like the ancient version of a meme. The bronze bull wasn't just history. It was history's favorite cautionary tale. The metal may have melted, but the myth hardened into legend. For centuries, it stood as the ultimate warning: roast others, and someday you'll roast too. But here's the twist. Legends travel faster than facts, which leaves one uncomfortable question. Was it real, or just a story sculpted in hindsight? Chapter 8 takes a skeptical bite. What if the bull was propaganda all along? Here's the dirty secret of ancient history. It's basically a group chat where everyone's subtweeting everyone else. Our main sources on Phalaris? They're scattered across centuries, dripping in bias and high on drama. Take Diodorus. He paints Phalaris as a sadistic monster with a bronze oven for enemies. Why? Because nothing sells a cautionary tale like a tyrant who invents artisanal roasting. But scroll forward and, surprise, other writers call him just and generous, a reformer even. So, which Phalaris was real? The benevolent lawgiver, or the bull-baking boogeyman? Hard to say when receipts are missing. Archaeologists, 0 bronze bulls, not even a hoof. Ancient Sicily left us temples, coins, amphorae, but no smoking metal beast. So maybe the bull never existed. Maybe it was a metaphor inflated by poets and moralists, the original fake news with better prose. Back then, gore was clickbait, tyrants were content, and cruelty, that was engagement. But here's the kicker. Whether the bull stood in Agrigentum or only in imagination, it worked. As terror, as tale, as timeless headline. Phalaris's PR campaign outlived marble, bronze, and bone. A story burned hotter than any furnace. Sometimes, myths scorch deeper than metal. And if you think this was the last inferno, think again. Because the bronze bull might have been the prototype, not the finale. Chapter 9 heats things up, literally. Thought one bull was bad? Meet the copycats. Phalaris didn't just invent a torture device. He gave the world a concept, suffering as spectacle, and humanity, ever the overachiever, turned that into a franchise. Fast forward 1,000 years, medieval Europe, they cooked up the Iron Maiden, steel womb of spikes for the unholy. Asia, brazen cauldrons and red-hot grids, boil 'em, brand 'em, broil 'em. Even Renaissance Italy with all its art and music. C kept a side hustle in burning chairs. Fire never goes out of style when fear is the currency. The formula stayed the same. Take pain, add theatre, garnish with moral justification. Witch trials, public barbecues. Heretics, extra crispy. The crowd came not just to see justice, they came for the show. Inquisitors wrote manuals, executioners became artisans, and centuries later, the Nazis would study medieval devices with academic curiosity. Technology advanced, but the melody stayed, the orchestra of screams. The Bronze Bull wasn't an artifact, it was a blueprint. The first scream set to music echoed across ages. Once rulers realized agony could entertain and intimidate, the symphony never stopped. What does that say about us? The final chapter chills the heat, because the bull may be gone, but the appetite, oh, that never died. Chapter 10 turns the spit, why we still feast on fear.